Minho wiped the blood from his forehead as he crawled out of the twisted wreckage of his research shuttle. The small craft had been his home for 3 months while he studied alien plant life in this sector of space. Now it was nothing but smoking metal scattered across purple sand. The air on planet Velthura was thick and hot. Strange orange trees stretched toward 2 suns hanging in the crimson sky. Minho checked his oxygen meter and felt his stomach drop. His breathing mask was cracked, and the ship's life support was completely dead. He had maybe 6 hours of breathable air left in his emergency tank. He grabbed his research bag and started walking. The crash had happened near what looked like old stone buildings rising from the desert. Maybe he could find shelter there, while he figured out how to send a distress signal. His communication equipment was fried, but he still had his portable scanner and some basic supplies. The ruins were bigger than they looked from far away. Massive stone blocks covered in strange symbols created walls that reached high into the sky. Minho had studied ancient alien cultures, but these markings were unlike anything he had seen before. They seemed to glow faintly in the dying light of the twin suns. As he walked deeper into the ruins, Minho noticed the air was cooler here. His scanner showed the atmosphere was actually breathable, which was a huge relief. He could take off his damaged mask and conserve what little oxygen he had left in his tank. The first breath of alien air tasted metallic, but wasn't harmful. The stone corridors led him to a large circular chamber. The walls were covered in detailed carvings, showing what looked like battles and ceremonies. Tall pillars supported a domed ceiling with crystal formations that gave off soft blue light. Minho set down his bag and pulled out his scanner to record everything. This was an incredible archaeological find. That's when he heard the footsteps. Heavy, clawed feet scraped against stone as shadows moved in the corridors around him. Minho froze, realizing he might not be alone in these ruins. His heart started pounding as he remembered the mission briefing warnings about potentially hostile alien life in this region. 3 figures emerged from different doorways, surrounding him completely. They were tall, easily 8 feet high, with muscular bodies covered in dark green scales. Their heads were elongated like ancient earth reptiles, with glowing yellow eyes and rows of sharp teeth. Each one carried a weapon that looked like a cross between a spear and an energy rifle. Minho slowly raised his hands, trying to look as non-threatening as possible. He had basic translation software in his scanner, but it would take time to process their language. For now, he could only hope they understood peaceful intentions. The largest of the 3 aliens stepped forward and spoke in a deep, rumbling voice. The words sounded like a mixture of growls and clicks. Minho's scanner was working frantically to decode the language patterns. After a few tense moments, his device started providing rough translations. Human trespasser, sacred grounds, were the first words that came through clearly. Minho tried to explain using simple gestures and slow speech. "I am scientist. My ship crashed. I need help." He pointed to his damaged equipment, and then toward where his shuttle had gone down. The aliens talked among themselves in their complex language. Minho caught fragments through his translator. Ancient law, honor code, and ritual. None of it sounded particularly good for his situation. Finally, the leader addressed him again. This time his scanner provided a clearer translation. "You have entered the Corvan grounds. By our laws you must choose death for desecration or participation in the trial of strength." Minho felt his mouth go dry. Trial of strength? What kind of trial? The alien gestured toward the carved walls around them. "The Corvan ritual. Warriors. Compete for the right to mate with all females of our clan. The winner takes everything. You are here, so you must compete or die." Looking at the carvings more carefully now, Minho could see they depicted various challenges and fights. Warriors. Battling monsters, racing through dangerous terrain and engaging in single combat. His legs felt weak as he realized what he had stumbled into. "I don't understand," Minho said, hoping his translator was working properly. "I'm just a researcher. I study plants and soil samples." The alien leader's expression didn't change. "The sacred grounds have been entered. Honor demands satisfaction. Choose now, human." Minho looked around the chamber at the 3 towering warriors. Their weapons were still pointed at him, and he could see more figures moving in the shadows beyond the doorways. Running wasn't an option. and he certainly couldn't fight his way out. His mind raced through possibilities. Maybe if he participated in their ritual, he could find a way to escape, or at least buy time, until a rescue ship arrived. How hard could their challenges be? He was in decent physical shape, and humans were known for their endurance and problem-solving abilities. "Okay," he said finally, not really understanding what he was agreeing to. "I'll participate in your trial." The aliens exchanged glances, and Minho could swear he saw surprise in their reptilian features. Apparently, most trespassers chose death over facing their ritual. What Minho didn't realize was that he had just agreed to compete against 24 of the fiercest warriors on the planet for the right to mate with over 600 females. The Corvan ritual had never been won by an outsider, and most participants didn't survive the first challenge. As the aliens led him deeper into the ruins toward the preparation chambers, Minho wondered if he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. The morning air was cold as Minho stood at the entrance to the caverns of silent death. 24 Velthari warriors surrounded him, their scales gleaming in the early sunlight. Each one was at least twice his size, with muscles that could probably crush his bones without effort. He felt like a house cat surrounded by tigers. Gorak, the trial master, explained the rules through Minho's struggling translator. "Enter the caverns, reach the crystal chamber at the center, touch the sacred stone, return alive, simple." Nothing about this sounded simple to Minho. The cave entrance looked like a giant mouth ready to swallow him whole. Strange purple mist drifted from the opening, and he could hear unsettling sounds echoing from deep inside. "What about the poison?" Minho asked, remembering what he had overheard the night before. Gorak's reptilian face showed what might have been amusement. "Corvan gas fills the lower tunnels. Breathe too much, you die slowly. Breathe a lot, you die quickly. Most warriors hold their breath and run fast." Minho looked at his human lungs and wondered how long he could possibly hold his breath compared to these alien warriors. Probably not very long. He was already starting to regret his decision to participate in this deadly game. A horn sounded, and suddenly everyone was running toward the cave entrance. Minho got swept up in the stampede of massive warriors charging forward. He barely managed to keep his footing as scaled bodies pushed past him on all sides. The cavern was even worse than he had imagined. The walls were covered in a slimy substance that glowed faintly green. The purple gas was thicker here, making everything look fuzzy and dreamlike. Minho took a deep breath of clean air and plunged forward with the others. The Velthari warriors were incredibly fast. Their powerful legs carried them through the tunnels like living missiles. Minho found himself falling behind almost immediately. His human stride was no match for their alien physiology. Panic began to set in as he realized he was already losing. Strange noises echoed through the caverns. Somewhere ahead he could hear roaring and what sounded like fighting. The purple mist was getting thicker, and Minho's lungs were starting to burn. He needed air desperately but was terrified to breathe the poisonous gas. That's when he noticed a small opening in the wall that the larger warriors had run past without seeing. His smaller human body could fit through spaces they couldn't even notice. Desperate and running out of oxygen, Minho squeezed through the crack. He found himself in a narrow maintenance tunnel that seemed to run parallel to the main cavern system. The air here was cleaner, and he could finally breathe again. His scanner showed this was some kind of ancient ventilation system, probably built by whoever had constructed these ruins thousands of years ago. Following the tunnel seemed safer than going back to the poison-filled main route. Minho crawled forward on his hands and knees, using his scanner's light to navigate. The tunnel branched and twisted, but it generally seemed to head in the same direction as the main caverns. After what felt like hours of crawling, Minho heard a rumbling sound behind him. The tunnel walls started to vibrate, and dust fell from the ceiling. Something was happening in the main caverns, and it didn't sound good. He emerged from a ventilation grate into a large chamber filled with crystalline formations. This had to be the sacred chamber Gorak had mentioned. In the center stood a pillar of pure white crystal that seemed to glow with its own inner light. But the chamber was empty. Where were all the other warriors? Minho approached the crystal cautiously and touched its smooth surface. It was warm and seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. The moment his skin made contact, the crystal flashed bright white and symbols appeared on its surface. He had completed the first trial, but as he turned to leave, he heard voices approaching. 3 Velthari warriors entered the chamber, looking exhausted and battered. Their scales were covered in scratches, and one was limping badly. They stared at Minho in complete shock. "How did you get here so fast?" one of them asked through the translator. Minho didn't really understand the question. "I took the tunnels," he said simply. The warriors looked at each other with what appeared to be respect and fear. Through broken translations, Minho learned that ancient defense systems had activated in the main caverns shortly after the trial began. Poison darts had shot from the walls. Sections of the ceiling had collapsed. Strange energy barriers had appeared and disappeared randomly. 12 warriors had been eliminated by these traps. Several others had been forced to retreat due to injuries. Only the strongest and most cunning had managed to reach the crystal chamber, and they had arrived much later than this strange human who had somehow navigated the defenses perfectly. What Minho didn't realize was that his panicked scrambling through the maintenance tunnels had accidentally activated the ancient security systems. His smaller human body had triggered sensors that the larger Velthari couldn't reach. His desperate search for clean air had led him through passages that connected to the ruin's central computer network. Every time he had squeezed through a tight space or crawled over a sensor panel, he had unknowingly activated another layer of the cavern's defensive measures. The ancient builders had designed these systems to test intelligence and resourcefulness, not just brute strength. To the surviving Velthari warriors, it appeared that Minho had deliberately triggered these traps to eliminate his competition while taking a secret route to victory. His knowledge of the maintenance tunnels suggested he had studied the ancient ruins extensively and planned his strategy carefully. Word of the humans' tactical brilliance spread quickly through the Velthari settlement. Spectators who had expected to watch the soft alien die quickly were now talking about his cunning and preparation. Some even whispered that he might have supernatural knowledge of their sacred places. Minho walked back through the main caverns with the 3 surviving warriors, completely unaware that he was now being viewed as a master strategist rather than a lucky survivor. He was just glad to be alive and breathing clean air again. As they emerged into daylight, he saw the faces of hundreds of Velthari watching him with new interest. The females on their crystal platforms were leaning forward to get a better look at this human, who had somehow turned their deadliest trial into what appeared to be a carefully executed plan. The second trial began at noon, when the twin suns were at their hottest. Minho stood with 11 remaining Velthari warriors at the edge of the flame gorge, a massive canyon filled with bubbling lava that stretched as far as the eye could see. The heat rising from below made the air shimmer like water, and sweat was already pouring down his face. Across the gorge, about 50 meters away, stood their destination, a stone platform with another crystal marker they needed to touch. The distance looked impossible to jump, even for the powerful Velthari warriors with their muscular legs. Dracos, the largest remaining competitor, stepped forward first. He was easily 9 feet tall with arms like tree trunks. Without hesitation, he took a running leap toward the far side. For a moment, it looked like he might actually make it. His powerful legs launched him through the air like a missile. But physics doesn't care how strong you are. Dracos crashed into the rocky wall about 10 meters short of the platform. His claws scraped against stone as he tried desperately to climb up, but the rock was too smooth. He fell into the lava below with a splash that sent orange sparks flying everywhere. The other warriors watched in stunned silence. If Dracos couldn't make the jump, what chance did any of them have? 2 more warriors tried similar approaches, using different techniques and angles. One tried to use his spear as a pole vault. Another attempted to ricochet off the canyon walls. Both ended up as brief orange flashes in the molten rock below. Minho sat down on a boulder and pulled out his scanner. While the remaining warriors argued about jumping strategies, he was analyzing the problem like the scientist he was. The gorge was too wide to jump. The walls were too smooth to climb. But there had to be a solution, or this wouldn't be a trial, it would just be mass suicide. His scanner detected something interesting. The canyon walls on both sides had metal fixtures embedded in the rock. They looked ancient and were partially hidden by centuries of mineral buildup, but they were definitely artificial. Someone had put them there for a reason. Minho also noticed that scattered around the starting area were various metal objects, old spear tips, broken chains, pieces of armor from previous trials. Most of the warriors ignored this junk, but Minho saw potential building materials. "What are you doing, human?" asked Keth, one of the smaller warriors who had been watching Minho's strange behavior. "Building a bridge," Minho replied, not looking. Sharp from his work, the warriors laughed. Building a bridge across 50 meters of lava gorge with some old metal scraps. This soft alien had clearly lost his mind from the heat, but Minho had noticed something else. The metal fixtures in the walls were positioned perfectly to anchor a pulley system. His human ancestors had been using simple machines like levers and pulleys for thousands of years. This was just engineering. He spent the next hour collecting materials while the warriors continued their failed jumping attempts. 2 more fell into the lava, leaving only 6 competitors besides himself. Minho used his multi-tool to strip wire from his damaged communication equipment. He bent metal pieces into hooks and connectors. Slowly, a plan took shape. The key was understanding that he didn't need to support his full weight across the entire distance. He just needed to swing across like a pendulum. By connecting multiple pieces of chain and wire, he could create a long enough line to reach the fixtures on the far wall. His first challenge was getting the line across the gorge. The remaining warriors watched with growing curiosity as Minho tied one end of his improvised rope to a heavy spearhead. Using basic physics and lots of practice throws, he finally managed to hook the far side anchor point. Now came the scary part. Minho tied the other end to the anchor on his side, creating a diagonal line across the gorge. It wasn't perfectly horizontal, but it would work like a zip line. He fashioned a simple pulley from pieces of armor and tested the connection. "This is madness," muttered Vex, another warrior. "Even if your rope holds, how will you stop before hitting the wall?" Minho had thought of that too. He tied a second, shorter rope around his waist as a brake line. When he reached the far side, he could use this to control his swing and land on the platform instead of crashing into the rock. The female Velthari watching from their elevated platforms had grown quiet. They had never seen anyone approach their trials like this. Usually warriors relied on strength, speed, and courage. This human was treating their sacred challenges like puzzles to be solved. Syrah, the clan's lead female, leaned forward with interest. She had noticed how the human studied everything carefully before acting. He showed respect for their culture by asking questions about the symbols and carvings. Unlike the male warriors who boasted about their strength, this alien seemed genuinely curious about Velthari history and traditions. Minho tested his zipline system one more time, then took a deep breath. The drop to the lava below was at least 100 meters. If his calculations were wrong, or his improvised equipment failed, he would join the other warriors in the molten rock. He gripped his makeshift pulley and stepped off the edge. The ride across was terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. Hot air rushed past his face as he zipped over the deadly lava. His brake line worked perfectly, allowing him to swing onto the platform with only a few bruises. From the far side, he could hear shocked murmurs from the spectators. He had crossed the impossible gorge using nothing but scraps and basic engineering principles, but Minho wasn't finished. Looking at the remaining warriors stranded on the other side, he felt bad about leaving them behind. These were honorable competitors who deserved a fair chance. So he did something completely unexpected. He anchored his line on the destination side and called across the gorge. "The rope is secure now. You can cross safely." The warriors were stunned. In Velthari culture, helping your competitors was unheard. Thov, competition meant eliminating rivals, not assisting them. But this human had just offered to share his advantage with everyone. One by one, the remaining warriors crossed using Minho's zipline system. They arrived on the platform looking at him with a mixture of gratitude and confusion. Some seemed almost ashamed that they needed help from the soft alien they had originally dismissed. Sarah and the other females took note of this behavior too. Strength and cunning were valued in Velthari society, but so was honor. This human had demonstrated both intelligence and unexpected generosity. As they moved toward the next trial, word spread through the settlement about the human's latest feat. He hadn't just solved an impossible challenge, he had done it in a way that saved lives and showed respect for his competitors. Minho walked alongside the Velthari warriors, still not fully understanding that his scientific approach and collaborative spirit were completely revolutionizing their perception of what it meant to be strong. The arena of judgment was unlike anything Minho had ever seen. Carved from a single massive crystal formation, the circular fighting pit stretched nearly 100 meters across. The walls rose high above, covered in seats filled with thousands of Velthari who had traveled from distant settlements to witness this historic moment. Their excited roars echoed off the crystal surfaces, creating a thunderous wall of sound. Minho stood at one entrance tunnel, his legs shaking as he looked across the arena at his final opponent. Gorvak the Unbreakable was a legend among the Velthari people. Standing over 10 feet tall, his dark green scales bore the scars of countless victories. His massive arms ended in claws that could tear through metal, and his yellow eyes burned with the confidence of someone who had never known defeat. Through the previous trials, Minho had watched other warriors fall before Gorvak like wheat before a scythe. The champion moved with surprising speed for his size, and his tactical mind was as sharp as his claws. He had won the Corvan ritual 7 times before, claiming the right to mate with the females of 7 different clans across their world. Now, as the final horn sounded and the crowd fell silent, Minho finally understood what he had gotten himself into. This wasn't just about survival anymore. The winner of this combat would claim all 647 females of the clan as mates. The thought made his stomach turn, with a mixture of terror and embarrassment. "I can't do this," Minho called out to Gorak, the trial master. "I withdraw from the competition." A shocked gasp rose from the crowd. In the history of the Corvan ritual, no one had ever tried to withdraw from the final combat. Gorak's reptilian face showed genuine confusion as he consulted with the clan elders. "The sacred laws are clear," Gorak announced finally. "Once blood has been shed in the trials, the ritual must reach its conclusion. You may surrender and accept death, or you may fight and possibly live. There is no other path." Minho looked up at the crystal balconies where the Velthari females sat watching. Their faces showed a mixture of curiosity and concern. Many of them had been following his progress through the trials with growing interest. Seira, the clan's lead female, was leaning forward intently, her intelligent eyes fixed on his face. The realization hit him like a physical blow. These weren't prizes to be won, they were intelligent beings with their own thoughts and feelings. The entire system suddenly seemed barbaric to his human sensibilities, but he was trapped by alien laws and customs he barely understood. Gorvak stepped into the arena, his massive frame blocking out the light from above. "You have fought well. For a soft skin," he rumbled, his voice carrying easily across the crystal space. "But this ends now. I will make your death quick and honorable." The champion charged forward with surprising speed, covering half the arena distance in seconds. Minho barely managed to dodge the first swipe of those terrible claws. The wind from the missed attack was enough to knock him sideways. For the next few minutes, Minho did nothing but run and dodge. Gorvak's strength was overwhelming. Every punch cracked the crystal floor where it landed. His speed was incredible for something so large, and his reach meant Minho couldn't get close enough to land any meaningful hits. But as he ran desperately, around the arena, Minho began to notice something strange. The crystal walls were reflecting and amplifying sounds in unusual ways. His footsteps created complex echoes that seemed to bounce around the space multiple times. When Gorvak roared in frustration, the sound waves created visible ripples in the air. Minho's scientific mind started working even as he continued dodging death. The arena wasn't just a fighting space, it was a massive acoustic instrument. The specific shape and crystal composition created resonance patterns that could be manipulated if someone understood the physics involved. During a brief respite, while Gorvak paused to catch his breath, Minho grabbed a piece of broken crystal from the floor. Instead of using it as a weapon, he struck it against the wall at a specific angle. The resulting tone was pure and piercing, causing several Velthari in the audience to cover their ears. Gorvak shook his massive head, clearly disoriented by the unexpected sound. Minho struck the wall again, this time at a different frequency. The crystal arena began to sing with harmonic vibrations that seemed to affect the champion's balance. What trickery is this? Gorvak snarled, swinging wildly at shadows as the acoustic disturbance continued. Minho had discovered something crucial about Velthari physiology. Their large, sensitive ears that gave them excellent hearing also made them vulnerable to specific sound frequencies. By creating interference patterns with the arena's natural acoustics, he could disrupt their spatial awareness and coordination. He began moving systematically around the arena, striking walls at calculated points to create a complex web of sound. Waves. The effect was like being inside a giant musical instrument that was slowly driving Gorvak insane with disorientation. But sound alone wouldn't be enough to defeat the champion. Minho needed to use psychology as well. He had observed that Velthari warriors were trained to expect direct confrontation. They prepared for strength against strength, speed against speed. They didn't know how to handle an opponent who refused to play by their rules. Instead of attacking, Minho kept talking while maintaining his acoustic assault. Why do you fight, Gorvak? What do you gain from claiming females who have no choice in the matter? The questions seemed to confuse the champion almost as much as the disorienting sounds. Velthari culture didn't encourage philosophical thinking. During combat, warriors were expected to fight with instinct and training, not to contemplate the meaning of their actions. Here it is the way, Gorvak replied, but his voice carried less certainty than before. Is it, though? Minho continued, dodging another increasingly unsteady attack. Look at them. He gestured toward the female sections. Do they look happy about being prizes to be won? For the first time in the combat, Gorvak actually looked up at the crystal balconies. What he saw there seemed to shake him more than any physical blow could have. The females weren't cheering for either fighter. Many looked uncomfortable with the entire situation. Some were even talking quietly among themselves, clearly discussing something other than the combat below. This moment of distraction was what Minho had been waiting for. Not to deliver a killing blow, but to do something completely unprecedented in Corvan history. He stopped running, dropped his crystal weapon, and sat down in the middle of the arena. I won't fight you anymore, Gorvak, he said clearly, his voice carrying in the sudden silence. Not like this, not for this. The champion stopped mid-charge, completely bewildered by this turn of events. The crowd was silent, unable to process what they were witnessing. Even the trial masters looked confused about how to proceed. In that moment of perfect silence, Minho's human voice rang out across the crystal arena, about to propose something that would change Velthari society forever. The silence in the arena of judgment stretched on for what felt like hours. Thousands of Velthari stared down at the human, sitting calmly in the center of the crystal floor, while their greatest champion stood frozen in confusion. This had never happened before in the entire history of their people. Gorvak looked around, desperately, his massive frame trembling with uncertainty. Get up, he demanded, his voice echoing off the crystal walls. Fight me properly. This is not how the Corvan ends. Minho remained seated, looking up at the towering warrior with calm eyes. You're right, Gorvak. This isn't how it usually ends, but maybe that's the problem. The trial masters were frantically consulting ancient texts and arguing among themselves. Their sacred laws had clear rules for victory, defeat, and death in combat. But nobody had ever written down what to do when one fighter simply refused to continue. Elder Thrakos, the oldest and most respected lawkeeper, finally stepped forward. His ancient voice carried across the arena through speaking crystals. The key. Human has not surrendered, nor has he been defeated, but he will not fight. This creates a situation our ancestors never anticipated. A murmur of confusion rippled through the crowd. Some Velthari were angry at what they saw as cowardice. Others were intrigued by this unprecedented turn of events. The females on their crystal balconies were leaning forward, clearly fascinated by what would happen next. There is another possibility, Minho said, rising slowly to his feet. What if we change the rules? The arena erupted in shocked roars. Change the rules of the sacred Corvan ritual? The idea was blasphemous to many, traditional Velthari, but others, particularly among the younger generation, seemed curious about what the human might propose. Elder Thrakos raised his staff for silence. Speak, human, but know that your words may determine whether you leave this arena alive. Minho took a deep breath, knowing he was about to either solve this impossible situation or make it much worse. Your Corvan ritual assumes that females are prizes to be won, but what if they're not? What if they're intelligent beings who should have a choice in their own lives? The female sections of the arena suddenly became very quiet. This was exactly what many of them had been thinking, but could never say aloud in their male-dominated society. Sarah, the clan's lead female, stood up on her crystal platform. The human speaks truth that we have long known but could not voice. We are not objects to be claimed by the strongest warrior. Her words created chaos in the arena. Male warriors roared in outrage, while females throughout the crowd began standing and voicing their agreement. The foundations of Velthari society were shaking right before everyone's eyes. Minho continued speaking over the noise. I propose something different. Instead of claiming your females as my prize, I suggest we create something new. A partnership between humans and Velthari based on mutual respect and shared knowledge. What kind of partnership? Elder Thrakos asked, his ancient eyes showing genuine curiosity despite his shock. A cultural exchange, Minho explained. Humans have technologies and perspectives that could benefit your people. Velthari have strength, honor, and knowledge that could help humanity. Instead of conquest, we could have cooperation. Gorvak, who had been listening with growing confusion, finally spoke up. But the Corvan laws are sacred. They cannot simply be ignored. They don't have to be ignored, Minho replied. They can evolve. Your ancestors created these laws to ensure the strongest traits were passed to future generations. But strength isn't just physical power. Intelligence, creativity, and compassion are strengths too. Many of the females were nodding in agreement. They had watched Minho's progress through the trials and seen how his different approach had succeeded where brute force failed. His combination of problem-solving skills and respect for others represented exactly the kind of leadership they wanted to see. Sarah stepped forward to address the crowd directly. Sisters, we have watched this human solve impossible challenges through wit rather than violence. He has shown respect for our culture while questioning its limitations. Perhaps it is time we had more say in our own destinies. The female uprising was unprecedented in Velthari history. For centuries, their voices had been silent in matters of law and leadership. But Minho's words had given them permission to speak truths they had always known. Elder Thrakos consulted with his fellow lawkeepers for several long minutes. Finally, he announced their decision. The situation is truly without precedent. The human has technically won the Corvan through his opponent's inability to defeat him. But his refusal to claim the traditional prize creates a legal paradox. So what happens now? Minho asked. We must create new law for a new situation, the elder replied. If the human truly wishes to establish this cultural exchange rather than claim his prize, the council will consider it. But it must be done properly with ceremony and binding agreements. Over the following days, negotiations took place that would reshape both societies. Minho worked with Sarah and other intelligent Velthari to draft agreements that respected both cultures while allowing for growth and change. The humans would establish a permanent embassy on Velthara, sharing their scientific knowledge and peaceful technologies. In return, the Velthari would provide protection and teach humans about their advanced metallurgy and crystal engineering. Most importantly, Velthari females would gain equal voices in their society's decisions. The Corvan ritual would continue, but as a test of overall fitness for leadership rather than just physical dominance. Winners would become clan leaders, responsible for the welfare of all members, not owners of unwilling mates. When Minho's rescue ship finally arrived 3 months later, they found him not as a stranded scientist, but as Earth's first ambassador to the Velthari people. The captain was amazed to discover that what had started as a simple rescue mission had turned into humanity's first successful alien alliance. The story of Minho's accidental victory and revolutionary diplomacy spread throughout human space. It became proof that humanity's greatest strength wasn't superior technology or military might, but their ability to find creative solutions to impossible problems. On Velthara, The changes continued long after Minho established the embassy. At the Kham, cultural exchange brought new ideas and perspectives that benefited everyone. Young Velthari began studying human concepts of equality and democracy, while human scientists learned advanced alien techniques for working with crystal technology. Sarah became the first female to win a reformed Corvan trial, claiming leadership of her clan through intelligence and wisdom rather than physical strength. Under her guidance, Velthari society began to flourish in ways their warrior-focused culture had never allowed before. Years later, when historians wrote about the first contact between humans and Velthari, they would call it the Accidental Alliance. What had begun as a crashed shuttle and a misunderstood ritual had become the foundation for lasting peace and cooperation between two very different species. Minho's victory had proven that sometimes the best way to win a fight is to change the rules entirely